What's happening, Wargamers? Welcome to another episode of the Dossier, the Marvel Crisis Protocol show, where we talk about all things Crisis Protocol characters, from the way their character miniature is designed, sculpted, painted, to the way they perform on the table. As usual, remember, these are not meant to be a comprehensive, in-depth look at the character. This is more meant to be a snapshot to give you an idea of what the character is kind of built around and what it might be able to do on the table. There are lots of great discussions online out there if you want to go check it out. And remember, if you want to support the channel and see more content like this, hit up patreon.com/AegisBrandStudios. All this content is made possible because of the wonderful support of the patrons. They are able to allow me to kind of keep up with all the releases and keep up with the content, keep the battle reports coming, all that sort of great stuff. So thank you to all the patrons who support this, and thank you to everyone else who supports just by hitting that like and subscribe button. Anyway, today we are going to be looking at Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch. And, not going to lie, this one was a funny one. When he got announced, there was a lot of people who kind of felt a little bit of a bait and switch, thinking maybe we were finally getting the actual Fantastic Four. But, yeah, here we are. So we got the original Human Torch, and right off the hop, I think this is a great model. I think the details of the flames coming off him look really good. He's got some flames licking off the body and some really, really good places that really give that look of, he is actually on fire. So it's really interesting how they were able to capture it. The little fire swirl at the bottom is really nice as well. I did have some difficulties with assembling the base of it a little bit. You can see there's some unpainted stuff because that's where the fire swirl used to be, and it didn't quite slot in right the first time around. So I had some difficulties, but that's probably a user error more than anything else. Otherwise, a lot of like the little flame details get glued on. They're not molded onto the body on itself. So if you wanted to paint them separately, you definitely could. He's a model that takes to some really creative ways of painting, like the contrast paints or zenithal highlights or anything like that. Can really let you do some cool stuff here, and just really bring up the color and vibrancy of the model itself. But overall, I think it's a fine model. Not my top 5, but I would say it's definitely a strong inclusion from the AMG team. Really shows their progress over time in designing these models. So what does the card bring to the table here? Let's take a quick look at this here. So we have the original Human Torch, 342, with 5 stamina, 3 threat, size 2, medium movement. It's a little unfortunate considering he, to my understanding, is a robot. That 2 Mystic is a little upsetting, considering so many other mechanical beings have a much better than 2 Mystic defense. Is it a game breaker for him? I don't think so. I don't think we see enough Mystic that really makes a big difference. That 5 stamina though does feel a little light because he should be 5 on he's 5 on both sides right there. So he's only got 10 stamina total, which does make him feel a little flimsy, which is a little unfortunate. A lot of my experiences with him, even though his physical and energy is fine, like his energy is good, his physical is okay. I do find that unfortunately he's not really able to take much of a punch. So we have the Burn Baby Burn as his builder attack. It is, well, I guess rather it's a gainer. It's a beam 3, 4 dice with a wild immolate. I am always a fan of gainer 4 dice attacks. I think that is the right way to do the gainers. And if you happen to be able to get them within the beam range, it works really nicely. Beam 3, I mean, it's not the longest beam, but it's not the shortest beam either. It can definitely work. You do need to commit to getting him up into the field, though, with that one, which does put him in a position where he doesn't necessarily always want to be. Next up, we got Nova Burst, which is a beam 2 4 dice attack for 1 power. However, you can pay additional power up to 7 to add dice to the attack equal to the power spent. So this can become a really big attack. This can become an 11 dice attack without external modifiers right there. And then it also does incinerate automatically after the attack is resolved. But the other deal is if the attack deals damage after each attack is resolved, this character suffers 1 damage. So if you get 2 or 3 characters into this beam, he's going to be hurting himself quite a bit. It's a beam 2, which means you are really committing to getting close there. It is a very short beam. I can't actually think of another beam 2 in the game. I think this is one of his big problems. I think his spender, aside from that range, is actually really solid. It's just getting him into that range means that if your spender doesn't actually do what it needs to do, you're leaving him in a very dangerous position. So he needs to finish the job if he gets in and does that. We got a hit and run for 2 power. We've seen this before. It's an action. You immediately make a move action followed, or an attack action followed by a move action. Use it once per turn. It is a way to kind of mitigate his shorter distances. You can kind of get in there, attack, and then hit and run to try and get away. But we're already starting to see a story here in that his kit is very expensive power-wise. We have Too Hot to Handle. Choose an enemy character within range 2 of this character. The chosen character immediately drops 1 asset for 3 power. This is kind of nice. It's a little on the expensive side, but it is not an action, which is kind of nice. We've seen a lot of these similar style attacks or superpowers become actions lately. So his is still currently not an action. You can get a character to drop an asset, which is really useful. It's a shame that it can't drop a civilian as well. It is just assets, so things like hammers, cosmic cube or infinity cube fragments, or legacy virus cures, stuff like that. Things like senators, scrolls, those things are civilians, so not dropping them. We have like touching a stovetop, which is a reactive power for 2. When an enemy character would push or throw this character after the effect is resolved, you use the superpower, and the character that caused the effect suffers 1 damage. Very simple. I don't use it very often, mostly because usually people aren't throwing or pushing him because they're just outright dummying him a lot of the time. But when it's useful, it's useful. We have Controlled Burn. When this character ends in advance, it gains 1 power for each character within 2 of it with the Incinerate special condition. This is a great way of powering them up. It's a little tricky to arrange at times, but I have played some games, especially with his New Age card, where I've been able to do a hit and run and just gain a whole bunch of power and be in a great position for a Nova Burst by being able to just dump a whole power into it. Alternatively, it's a great way of doing a Nova Burst, then into a hit and run, and then regaining some power that you might have spent on the Nova Burst. Tricky to get around. When it works, it's really nice, but like I said, tricky. Then he has immunity to Incinerate and Flight. So that is his character card. Now, we have referenced a other card here a couple times. It is a New Age. So this is a tactics card that I think is worth talking about for him. It is a Shield affiliated card, because Jim Hammond is a Shield character. It's active. He can spend 3 power. Each character within 3 of Jim Hammond gains the Incinerate special condition this round. And then, in addition, allied Shield characters this round, when attacking a character with Incinerate, will get to add 2 extra dice if they're making an energy attack roll. This is a really interesting one because when he came out, there wasn't a lot of energy attacks in Shield. If I recall correctly, I think Agent Widow had one, Black Widow had one, Fury Senior had one, Hawkeye. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of energy attacks. That is since improved, and there are ways of getting a little bit more of it. This is a very interesting card. I don't think it's a very hyper competitive card. I think you kind of have to build around it and kind of work it in if you want to use it. But it's also one of those cards that if you can pull it off, will absolutely give you a great churn of attacks. Something I've done recently to some great effect is using a New Age Stark Armory and the Initiative. I had Captain Marvel Cosmic Avenger throwing 11 dice Warbirds into characters like Immortal Hulk and Voodoo. And it was just absolutely glorious. I got to live the dream on that one. So where does that leave the Human Torch for us? He is a character that I think just comes a little shy of what he really wants to be doing in the game. And I think a lot of it comes down to the range of his attacks. If he had a range 4 attack, even if it was just a single target attack, I think he'd feel a little bit better, because I think the second you commit him up there, he is not tough enough. He doesn't have the stamina pool to really take on a whole bunch of attacks there. You might get lucky with energy attacks, and you might be able to weather a little bit of a storm there. But the second physical or mystic come around, I mean, he is going to wither. That 5 stamina on both sides doesn't really do it a whole lot. And if they're able to take him out and you don't have priority, he's just going to go down really fast the next round as well, because nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that, potentially 11 dice, spender attack. So where does he have homes? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of places I really see him. I've been playing around with him in Shield lately, trying to get him to kind of work there. But outside of Shield, it's really kind of tricky to see where he wants to be. And again, a lot of it comes down to the defensive stuff. I mean, I suppose there's an argument that you can make that, maybe in a an affiliation where you can reroll some defensive dice. So Tony Shield, for instance, or Black Panther, or another affiliation where you can really power them up quickly, like A Force, or even Cabal, because Cabal on those beam gainers, he's potentially gaining 2 power for every target hit with the beam. So there is some arguments there. But I think the problem is that what he brings to the table, it feels like you kind of have to build around him, and that makes things really kind of tricky because I don't think he's strong enough to be a linchpin of a team, and he's not quite there as a support. There's a couple places where they could probably make him a little bit more viable, as we've discussed. A little bit more range on some of his attacks. Maybe allow the Too Hot to Handle to get any token that's being carried, so civilian and asset. Uh, but yeah, it's a tricky one to see where he is. But that is the Human Torch. I'm going to keep playing around with him. Leave your comments below. Let us know if you've had any success with the Human Torch, and we will see you next time. Happy wargaming.